In Jacksonville, Florida, there's a world that's a mix of rap, gangs, and deadly feuds. At the center of this dangerous life is Foolio, a popular rapper, and the violent conflicts that involve him and his associates. Sadly, many of Foolio's friends and affiliates have faced tragic fates, either ending up in prison for long sentences or being brutally murdered. This story is about how these events unfolded and the dangerous lives some of these rappers lived. BBY, whose real name was Tavis Bibbs, was a close friend of Foolio. BBY was only 16 years old when his life was tragically taken. He was caught in the middle of a gang war between two rival gangs in Jacksonville. Foolio's group, KTA, Kill Them All, and Youngin Ace's gang, ATK, Ace's Top Killers. This feud turned deadly, and BBY was one of its victims. On February 25, 2019, BBY was shot and killed. His death wasn't just another crime in Jacksonville, it was personal. For Foolio, BBY was more than just an affiliate. He was like a brother. When BBY died, Foolio and many others were heartbroken. His family, especially his mother, was devastated. She said she felt like her life stopped the day BBY died, and nothing felt the same anymore. To make things even worse, after BBY's death, the rival gang didn't just stop there. They mocked his death in rap songs and on social media, adding insult to injury. This is something that happens often in these rap feuds. When one person dies, the other side doesn't just celebrate, they make songs about it too. The cycle of violence continues, and no one is safe. K Shorty is another name tied to Foolio. Like many young rappers in Jacksonville, K Shorty was caught up in the violent gang wars that dominate the city's streets. On August 3, 2020, K Shorty was involved in a shootout at a convenience store. He was shot in the leg and found with an AR-15 rifle nearby. The police arrested him and later charged him with being a felon in possession of a firearm. But this wasn't just about the gun, it was about the gangs. During his trial, K Shorty's own rap lyrics were used against him. He had a song called Onyo, where he described being shot and dropping his gun. In court, they said his lyrics were like a confession, describing the exact crime scene. In the end, he was sentenced to 12 years in prison, even though he pleaded with the judge to be lenient. YNR Mookie, another rapper from Jacksonville, also ended up behind bars. Mookie was part of Foolio's crew, and like many others, his life was wrapped up in the gang culture of the city. Mookie was charged with possession of firearms, and despite his hopes of getting probation, he was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Mookie tried to convince the judge that he wasn't a violent person, claiming that his music was just entertainment. But the court didn't believe him. They used his music videos against him, saying that he promoted violence and gang culture. The judge admitted that Mookie was talented, but she couldn't ignore the danger he posed to the community. So, she sent him to prison for a decade. YNR Slugga, a co-defendant in Mookie's case, also got caught in the same situation. He was arrested during a traffic stop where police found guns in the car. Like Mookie, Slugga was also part of the violent rap culture that Jacksonville is known for. His own mother testified at his sentencing, saying that he was a good kid who had been influenced by the environment he grew up in. She said that he had always been kind-hearted but was dragged into the gang life because of where he lived. Lil N's story is one of the most tragic. He was a passenger in a car when another vehicle pulled up alongside and fired 12 rounds into the car. Lil N was killed in the drive-by shooting. What made this even worse was that Lil N and the shooter, SUU, were actually blood relatives. SUU was once close to Lil N, but when they joined rival gangs, their bond was broken. SUU even mocked Lil N's death in a music video, showing just how deep the hatred went between the two gangs. The gang rivalry in Jacksonville has torn families apart. People who were once close, like Lil N and SUU, became enemies because of the gangs they chose to be part of. Even after Lil N's death, the violence didn't stop. Foolio and others continued to troll and mock each other, making the situation even more dangerous. Lil Buck was another close friend of Foolio who was tragically killed. He was targeted by rivals from the ATK gang, who followed him from his home to a store. They ambushed him as he was leaving the store and shot him in broad daylight. This murder was part of a series of retaliations between the gangs. Lil Buck's death was a direct response to Foolio's crew mocking the death of an ATK member. What made this even more shocking was that one of the suspects in the killing, Abdullah Robinson Sr., was the father of Youngin Ace, Foolio's rival. Robinson Sr. eventually cooperated with the police and testified against his own son in the murder case. This shows just how deep the violence runs in Jacksonville, with even family members turning against each other. The violence in Jacksonville's rap and gang scene doesn't seem to have an end. Every time someone is killed, the other side responds with more violence. These rappers and gang members don't just settle their scores with guns. They also take to social media and music videos to troll their rivals. This only fuels the fire and makes the situation worse. Foolio and his affiliates are constantly at war with Youngeen Ace and his ATK crew. The feud between these two groups has resulted in countless deaths and prison sentences. Yet, despite all the violence and loss, the feud continues. These young rappers, many of whom are just teenagers, are caught up in a life of crime that seems impossible to escape. As long as the cycle of retaliation and trolling continues, more lives will be lost in Jacksonville. Foolio's story, along with those of BBY, K Shorty, YNR Mookie, Lil N, Lil Buck, and many others, is a sad reminder of what happens when gang violence and rap culture collide. These young men had talent and potential, but instead, they ended up trapped in a dangerous world that ultimately led to their downfall. In the world of Jacksonville rap, the lines between music and real life are blurred. Foolio and his affiliates have faced unimaginable tragedies, from losing their lives to spending decades in prison. The ongoing feud with Youngeen Ace and the ATK gang has claimed many lives, and there seems to be no end in sight. The story of Foolio's affiliates is a cautionary tale about the dangers of gang involvement and the deadly consequences of living in a world where violence is glorified in music.